All right, this is Donald Kendall, joined by Justin Haskins for another Stopping Socialism video here. Justin, I want to talk to you about this article. It's from the Washington Examiner. Came out just a few days ago, and it is titled Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg is, sorry, I have trouble pronouncing his name.
You're butchering it. You're butchering it.
I know he's a top-tier candidate now, but Pete Buttigieg's father is a Marxist professor who lauded the Communist Manifesto. So, like I said, he's the top tier now. He's, as of now, just after the New Hampshire primaries, he is actually in the lead by one delegate, okay, over Bernie Sanders. So he's definitely top tier. But the article starts off saying the father of Democratic presidential hopeful Pete Buttigieg was a Marxist professor who spoke fondly of the Communist Manifesto and dedicated a significant portion of his academic career to the work of Italian communist founder Antonio Gramsci, an associate of Vladimir Lenin. Joseph Buttigieg, who died in January at the age of 71, immigrated to the U.S. in the 1970s from Malta, and in 1980 joined the University of Notre Dame faculty, where he taught modern European literature and literature theory. He says he supported an updated version of Marxism that jettisoned some of Marx and Engels' most doctrine theories, though he was undoubtedly Marxist. He was an advisor to Rethinking Marxism, an academic journal that publishes articles that seek to discuss, elaborate, and or extend Marxian theory. So, I mean, you certainly can't be guilty of your father's crimes, Justin. So how much attention should we be paying to this idea?
I think what worries me, and I think what worries a lot of other people about this, is that Mayor Pete is he's a very far left guy. He's selling himself as kind of a moderate at this point, but in reality, he's not a moderate. He's a far left guy. He's not, however, Bernie Sanders or even Elizabeth Warren level far left guy. So, for instance, sort of the litmus test that the Democratic Party is using right now is single payer healthcare.
Sure. And
Mayor Pete does not want full blown single payer healthcare tomorrow. He said that maybe ideally we would someday have that system, but I don't want to throw everybody off of their healthcare plans. If they like their healthcare plans, people should be able to have Medicare if they want it. Medicare for all who want it, or whatever he's calling it, right? So that's where Mayor Pete is. So is he a full-blown, socialist, Marxist? No, probably not based on that. But here's the problem, and this is really important for people to understand. Number one, we don't know much about him because he's been mayor of a town, and that's pretty much it. A medium-sized city or so. Number two, you can be a socialist, and you can even be a Marxist, far-left, communist type socialist, and not necessarily think that the best way to get there is to have socialism tomorrow. Mm-hmm. You see, now this is something that comes up all the time, even with people on the right. People on the right all the time criticize people like me for saying, well, these people are, so-and-so is a socialist. I say Elizabeth Warren is a socialist all the time. I absolutely think she's a socialist, without question. She supported the Green New Deal as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez presented it, and the Green New Deal is socialism. Okay, it's not Marxist communism, but it's socialism without question. Right. But she'll say she's a capitalist, and so I've had some people criticize me for saying that she's a socialist. Now, why you can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, but the reality is, you don't support a policy like the Green New Deal unless you're trying to go for socialism. You don't have to say, I want to blow up the whole system right now to be a true communist even. Sure. You can believe that we need to slowly get there. And in fact, even in Communist Manifesto, the communist document, the most famous communist document ever written in the history of, human civilization, Karl Marx talks about moving, advancing, having phases that get us there. He doesn't talk about just blowing the whole system up tomorrow necessarily. Some countries need to get there over a long period of time. He believed in this progression toward socialism and communism. So I say all this to say what worries me is Mayor Pete had a very close relationship with his dad, who I believe passed away. His dad was a Marxist. Mayor Pete is a very far left-wing guy. It's a reasonable question to ask. Is he actually a socialist who just believes we need to slowly get there? and maybe not as quickly as Bernie Sanders, right? I think that's a fair question to ask. And I think that this lends credibility to the idea that maybe he is a socialist and he just doesn't want to talk about it, doesn't want to admit it because politically it doesn't help his cause.
Yeah, I mean, it says that in this article that he had a close relationship with his father. It basically says that he wanted to grow up and figure out what was going on with these political discussions that he would see his father engaged in that would lead to such fist-pounding dinner debate. So he definitely has the interest there. You said that this is definitely an appropriate question to ask. Apparently, this question was asked to Liz Smith, a communications advisor to his Presidential Exploratory Committee, how his father's influenced his political beliefs, and they declined to comment. So there's that. The question was asked. And then he says that he considers himself a capitalist. He said this in a MSNBC interview on March 20th, that he considers himself a capitalist, but that the system needs changes. So this kind of leads to that statement that you just said, that it could be gradual here. And then it says here at the end of the article, in another MSNBC interview in February, Buttigieg said that socialism, quote, is a word in American politics that has basically lost all meaning, and that it is basically used as a kill switch to stop an idea from being talked about. So, Justin, we talk about this stuff all the time. I agree with that last statement. I think that socialism has been overused. I mean, just looking through the comments on our Facebook page, Stopping Socialism Facebook page, you see people that are trying to attribute socialism to local snowplows. If that's what socialism is, then yes, it has lost all meaning. So that's not what we're talking about when it comes to socialism. Now, of course, socialized industries, whether it's the education system or a healthcare system, even Social Security, I mean, they're horribly run because it's run by the government and horribly inefficient. If it was had free market factors in there, of course, it would be doing a much better job of all the things that it's trying to do, whether it's keeping people educated or healthy. But socialism, when we're talking about it, is the antithetical to capitalism. This is the degradation of private property. This is the degradation of voluntary interactions, and replacing it with government top-down mandates and central planning. That's what we're talking about here.
Right.
So, I mean, am I off base here? I think we agree on this.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I've been very, very careful. And StoppingSocialism.com, the articles that's at StoppingSocialism.com, they're very careful about defining socialism in a very specific way. It's not just anytime you have a government program is socialism, or anytime you even have collective property ownership, because by that logic, every country in the world is a socialist country. That's not what we mean by socialism. What we mean by socialism is twofold. One, yes, so exactly what you just said, collective property ownership and management. How much of that do you want? Do you want mostly an economy that's mostly collectively owned and managed? That's socialism, okay? In my view, you're a socialist nation, you're a socialist economy once you get to the mostly camp. Obviously, that's a subjective sort of way of looking at it. There's no way to say, well, it's 51% now socialist, so therefore you're a socialist economy. There is a subjective element to it, but that's where we look at socialism. That's number one. Number two is, I think you can be a person who says, you know what? I'm a Bill Clinton Democrat, but I'm also a socialist. Even though Bill Clinton wasn't a socialist, because I believe we have to very slowly get there. Your end goal is also important. And you would think that people on the right would know this better than anybody, especially people who lean libertarian, because every libertarian I know, for the most part, believes that eventually they want a world where the government is extremely limited. It's only limited to protecting individual property rights and things like that, and ensuring the rule of law, but not actually having these big, massive government programs. We want a world, and I consider myself a libertarian, I want a world where everyone is so rich, they don't need government programs. That's what I want. Where everything is so cheap, everybody in society can afford to live a good life. That's what I want. Okay. I don't think we need it. I think that's my end goal. Do I think we're going to get there tomorrow? No. Do I want to get there tomorrow? Do I want to blow the whole thing up today and just say, well, libertarian time? No, of course not. I don't want to do that either. So does that mean I'm not a libertarian because I don't want it tomorrow? Right. Of course it doesn't. Right. So what's the difference between that and socialism? It's the same kind of idea. You can be a socialist, but think it's going to take 200 years to get there. And I think that's the important thing to keep in mind with Mayor Pete. It's an important thing to keep in mind with everybody on the left. I actually think much of the Democratic Party is socialist at heart. They really do want to get there eventually, but a lot of them just don't think you could do it tomorrow. Now, people like Bernie Sanders, they think you could get most of that tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's the real difference, I think, between many in the Democratic Party and people like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yep, and Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, they are increasingly becoming the face of the Democratic Party, and so this is kind of the road that they're pushing the country in. And unfortunately, there's a lot of young people that are following them down that road. So that is why that we are so dedicated to the idea, our project called Stopping Socialism. If you are as enthusiastic about these ideas, follow us on Facebook. You can just type in Stopping Socialism, find our Facebook page. You could also subscribe to us on YouTube to get probably not daily, but we're going to be regular videos like this coming at you at least a couple of times a week. Justin, anything else you want to add to that?
Absolutely not.
All right. Well, thank you all. That'll do it for today, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.